We were really happy to see the turnout today, and glad that everybody's participating in the democratic process. And we voted for Bernie, and we were big Bernie supporters the last time, and hopefully he's going to bring it home this time.
Far less contentious than the Hillary-Bernie fiasco we had. The number, like there wasn't not an issue where it felt like there were a mistake with numbers, so it was a lot smoother process. I caucus for Pete. It's pretty close. Like I think Bernie's gonna win the county, and then behind that, everybody else is pretty close.
So I voted for Bernie Sanders. It was, I think, last caucus for the last election. I didn't get to go caucus. I wanted to caucus for Bernie Sanders, ended up not doing it because I worked, which I know you could have still gone, but I wasn't as informed. But yeah, I wanted to vote for Bernie just because of how much he is for the people, by the people. Hasn't taken any super PACs. He's fighting for simple implementations that other first world countries have, like Medicare for all, minimum living wage, etc., etc. And it kind of hits a little more at home. Recently, I had a friend who just got diagnosed with diabetes. So, under any other presidency, it's very hard to imagine. Like, I don't want him to be in a situation where he has to ration his, insulin. So, Bernie's the one that's offering, a system that that we should have technically as the richest country in the world.
I think we really ought to abolish the caucuses in favor of primary. It's just too inefficient. It doesn't encourage maximum participation. I think, you shouldn't. I think the caucus process tends to bring out people who are very politically involved, and I think people who don't spend a lot of time thinking about politics and who have maybe 15 minutes or half an hour to vote deserve their say as well in the selection of the candidates. This is the second time. Yeah, so I hope it's the last.
We won our precinct, so I'm happy about that. And it went pretty good. I mean, once everybody got it, once everyone was in, which was that was a big struggle, was just getting it all in. Once everybody was in, everybody went to their precincts and did the caucus thing. So we're good to go. I'm curious to see what the results are for everybody else, and that's where we're at. I mean, it was fun. There was a lot of people there. I think there was a lot more engagement than they were expecting. I've been working for the Sanders campaign for a few weeks now, canvassing, so I kind of had an idea that we're going to get something like this, so we'll see what the numbers are at the end of the day. Nobody likes it. I kind of have a soft spot in my heart for it because of the history. It's an important innovation in American democracy, but it also may not work in the modern world. It might be that because of social media, internet, that kind of thing. I mean, that was a problem, I guess, in Iowa, was that people were broadcasting the results, or that the phones were getting jammed because the number was available, so they couldn't broadcast the results, stuff like that. So everybody's saying, can we just do early voting, or send mail-in votes like they do, say, Washington or Oregon or stuff? I'm like, well, that's kind of what everybody would like. So, but I want to say everybody did a good job. Everybody showed up to caucus. It was everyone was dedicated. Also, everybody was really friendly to each other. So the Biden campaign was giving us mints, and the Steyer campaign was, they were cool. We were talking to them, and then one of them came over to caucus with us when they weren't viable. So it was pretty collegial. It was a really collegial kind of thing.
So I'm a Mayor Pete supporter, and we had a good caucus, smooth caucus. A little bit of a backlog in the line, so it took a little longer for people to get signed in. But once everybody was in there, we did our first alignment, and then did a little caucus math to figure out viability, and then we did a second alignment, added in those early votes along the way, and then allotted the delegates. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a good conversation with the neighborhood. It's kind of fun because you get to talk to your neighbors and see what they're thinking. And I think of caucusing as kind of like it's like a community coming together talking about what they want for the world, which is in a way really sweet, like a really cool democratic exercise. So yeah, it was fun. I'm actually a government teacher, and so I think that the caucus is cool, caucus is fun, caucus is interesting and unique. I worry that it limits who can participate, and so I would be in favor of something like a primary, but a ranked choice primary. So the one cool thing about a caucus is you get a ranked choice, which is, I think, really important and gives you a much more accurate, view of what a population thinks. So I would love it if we went to a primary with lots of early voting, but a ranked choice primary. So hopefully that's what happens next time around.
It was pretty obvious from the beginning it was going to be Bernie and Biden as number one and number two, and the only unusual thing was that Pete did really well and came in third.
We didn't really do much. We kind of just followed everyone else. We're new to this.
Bernie!
Oh yeah, there was a bunch of people from Bernie.
It's weird. This is the caucusing is odd. Yeah. Well, we don't deal with it in California, but it's a very interesting system. It's a lot of learn on the job type stuff. A lot of people are really awesome and are giving up their time to do this, but the training is not there, and it's quite disorganized. And it's not anybody's fault in there. Everybody's awesome in there. Every volunteer that's working this is dope. But apps have issues. People forgot how to tabulate stuff. It's hard, yeah. Tom's genuine. I like Tom because he's been fighting climate change. He's been fighting big banks. He's been fighting corporate corruption. And he's like a very genuinely good dude.
I like participating. I think the caucus is really important. I was just talking to somebody inside about how it's a commitment. You have to care about your community, you have to care about your candidate, you have to care about politics, and kill your whole Saturday. I like Pete just because he's younger, he's centrist, just represents a lot of things that are the opposite of what we have, not just in the presidency, but in Congress right now as well. I just see hope the way we saw in Obama. It's a similar thing. I get a similar feeling. I've been following him since last April. I've seen him speak a few times. I've met him last August. My opinion really hasn't changed, but I will support whatever Democrat gets the nomination as a Democrat. That's going to happen. So even if it's Biden or Bernie Sanders, which they're two completely different people, I still align with them more than I do the current president. So. All right, Caucus.
Yeah, it went really well. It went really well today for Bernie. He won every single precinct in there. And there were 12 precincts in this at this caucus site, and he won every single one of them. On one precinct I know of, he was the only viable candidate, so he got all the delegates for that particular precinct. It could not have gone better. And the best thing about the caucus system is you're with your neighbors, because it's all based on locality. And so we're sitting around talking to our neighbor. Oh, what street do you live on? Where do you? And so it's like, oh, hey, how you doing? You run into somebody you haven't seen for a while, and it's a wonderful thing. But it's also such a pain in the butt because it takes so long, But the caucus, it's a what can I say? It's kind of a heartwarming relic of the 1850s, It really is. But you kind of get it once you're in there and you're talking to people. You just go along with it and you just say, okay. Even only 20% of the people that are registered end up participating in it. But these are people who are committed. These are people who are serious about it and they want to do things.
Honestly, I really like the early voting part. I think that worked well for a lot of people, and that's what we need to do, is get people out to vote. So that worked well, but now I'm hearing a lot of people say, so why aren't we just doing a primary? So my understanding is why we aren't doing a primary is the caucus put us in this position, fourth, first in the West, fourth, in the process. Right, and so that positioning is interesting and important. I think people in the state are taking it more seriously. So it's a toss-up for me personally. I'm going to do whatever we need to do to get across the line. I've enjoyed the process. I did it last time. I mean, it was nuts last time. The process itself, once you're in the room with your neighbors, chit-chatting. I mean, I just like seeing who's in the neighborhood, right? who's committed. I like that part. And I think it's good, but most people don't have time for that. And this is Vegas with people doing shift work. You can't spend 5 hours in a room talking about this stuff. So if we could tighten it up, make it a little more efficient, I think that would be great. I still had a fun day. Go Bernie. Go Bernie. He killed it here today.
I wanted Bernie, and then our precinct ended up winning for Bernie. Everybody was very respectful and nice, so that's one of the things that I was afraid might not happen, so I'm glad.
Number one, I hate the caucus. I think it's a bad idea. It's a sellout by the Democratic Party in the state for getting an early election. This should never have been a caucus. It should always be just a standard election. The problem with it is, well, there's many problems with it. The main problem with it is that the most popular candidate doesn't necessarily get all of the representation they're entitled to. For instance, in our caucus, had we had one more voter in the caucus, one more out of 60-something voters, if we had one more, then Biden and Buttigieg wouldn't have even met the threshold. Because they met the threshold, they were guaranteed a delegate. We only had 4 delegates for the precinct. They were guaranteed 1 delegate, even though Bernie had 2 times, 3 times the vote that either one of them had. Yet the end of the caucus, the representation is everybody got 1 delegate. There's no way in the world that that's representative of democracy. That's a travesty, and it should be eliminated. The majority should take precedent.
It's exciting. It's interesting. I think it's going to end up kind of like we went in. There's going to be no clear candidate. Elizabeth Warren has been stable. She's got plans. But like most Democrats, I'll be supporting whoever is the Democratic nominee.
We're just in from California. We also went to Iowa, and we're Sanders supporters. We also really like Warren, but just sort of like here to observe. It seemed like it was running. By the time they actually got started, it was much smoother than the experience that we had, at least in the specific room that we were in Iowa, which was a giant mess.
The precincts are smaller here. There were a lot of them in one room, which was complicated, but in Iowa, the room we were in had 353 people in one precinct, and it was mayhem.
Yes.
So it was,
or maybe another amount of people, because they counted
count
3 times and never came up with the right number when they counted. So,
so this even when they would lose someone or whatever, it was easy to recount. It was easy to make sure you got numbers that made sense. That seemed nice.
A lot of Sanders observers.
Yeah, for some reason, right? Exactly.
Which is good.
It's great. Yeah.
I'm from Australia. You might be able to tell from my accent. So I'm a green card holder. I can't vote, but I went to Iowa to door knock for Bernie, and I was really passionate about his platform, and I had a really great experience just talking to the residents there and discussing his policies. So I decided to continue my Bernie journey here into Nevada. I've been here door knocking around this district for the last 3 days, and I've had some fantastic experiences with door conversations, and it's like a really different demographic here than it is in Iowa, where it's like 99% white people. So it's been really, what I find is I'm having a really great learning experience about the country. I'm learning about like people's despair, and they're just like, they don't trust the government a lot, and it's really hard to convince people to get out and vote. But like once you start talking to them about their issues like healthcare or student debt, then you can start to make some inroads. So
I voted for Tom Steyer. I just like his the policy he wants to bring for term limits.
It was great. Met a lot of wonderful, nice people, nice Democrats, and everybody seems really united on just putting our best foot forward and trying to get our candidates through. But either way, I think everybody's united to vote blue, which was really, really good. And seems like everybody's concerned about a lot of the same issues. So, all in all, we can hope for, 2020, turning it blue. I like his youth, and I like his intelligence. I like the fact that I have a feeling he looks like he will align himself with very intelligent people, at least I feel that. And I feel that I like the fact that he doesn't hesitate to say if he doesn't know the answer to something, and if he hasn't worked out on something didn't fall into place exactly as planned, he can raise his hand and be accountable. And I really appreciate the fact that he's of a generation that is that of my children, and I really feel that he's really focused on making this world a better world, and he can be held accountable for that. 20 years, God willing, nothing happens, that he'll be around here for that. And I like the direction he's headed for the people that I love.
I actually gave the speech for the Bernie group, in there. The number one thing is how he's polling nationally among not only Democrats but undecided and even, I don't know, maybe Republicans. The most recent poll, Washington Post, has him beating Trump by 6 points. So that gives me a lot of hope. But I've liked him for a long time. I voted for him in the primary in 2016. So.
Bernie Sanders won all 17 delegates from my district, and I was a precinct captain for the Sanders campaign, so I was very pleased with that. I thought my precinct was very patient when they were waiting for the caucus to get started, so when waiting for the line to come in, and just nothing but a pleasurable experience being precinct captain today.
I voted or caucused for Joe Biden, and I was a precinct captain too. So, and we were viable. So he got 2 delegates, and I'm going to go to the county convention to delegate for Joe Biden. I think, especially with his experience under President Obama, that he's seen how we should act, or how the president should act with foreign leaders, and also I think he has the experience and the wisdom to be able to, right our country to get it back on the track that it needs to go to, and then hopefully younger person can take up from next, in the next election. So, to even take it even further forward. I lived in Illinois and Washington, and we had, we just had the ballot, and never heard anything about being able to be a delegate. I mean, I got to say, hey, I want to be a delegate.
And this is my second caucus, so honestly, I wasn't thrilled about coming today, but I'm really glad I did. Mostly because everybody in the room was very respectful. We listened to each other, talk about our candidates and why we, stood behind them. And we tried to stick behind our first round, which was Joe. Unfortunately, he wasn't viable, and we moved on, and I went to Elizabeth Warren. One thing we did notice in our precinct is that the big shift in the second round went to Pete Buttigieg. So he picked up quite a bit on the second round, mostly with the early voters. Actually, it was all with the early voters. And so in our precinct, we ended up 2 for Warren, 2 for Bernie, and 2 for Pete Buttigieg. So we had 6 delegates, and it all worked out. Everybody walked away happy to see their meet new neighbors, and it was a great process. I'm glad I came out today. Elizabeth has heart. She has always been there. I know that she's written laws, brought laws to the Senate floor, and hoping to help the working class, and that's really what I appreciate about her. I don't think we have any bad candidates out there, by the way, right? I think everybody knows that this is an important election. We want to get behind a Democratic candidate that is running for our country and is uniting our country. We don't want somebody who divides our country. So I think we all understood in our room the importance of this election, and that at the end of the day, we're happy to go stand behind our candidates, but right now, we know we have to consolidate at the end.
I was there today, precinct captain for Bernie, and we did it. We did a good job in there, so I'm confident. My first caucus was 2016. This was a better experience, better organized, and the result was, were good for us. Bernie is because he's been consistent with his views and position ever since he started politics. So, and also most of his funding, not all of his funding comes from people, and there's no room for compromise as far as lobbying and private funding and corporate funding. That's one of the major reasons why I support him.
I voted for Bernie, and I feel like, okay, I have a PhD in physics. I have $68,000 of student loan debt. I would love to see that erased. I love how Bernie Sanders wants to legalize marijuana. That is something that I feel very passionate about. I feel like he's the one person who can take on Wall Street. I mean, this is from someone like myself owning stocks in the stock market, but I feel like, Wall Street has too much influence on elections. Something has to be done about that. I feel like he's the one person who could stand up against the military-industrial complex. I feel like he's the one person who represents values that I feel like, through my personal experiences in life, I feel like I identify with. So I'm 37 years old, my name's Curtis, and I have a PhD in physics voted for Bernie Sanders. I loved it. I loved it. It was, well, actually, honestly, it was a long process. Usually, like, I'm working on the weekends and such like that, but, I mean, hey, bring my laptop with me, do some Excel spreadsheet work, and just do that while this process just kind of goes the way it goes.
I think people had a chance to talk about what they felt like and who they supported, and I think overall it was successful. And I think better than 4 years ago, people were nicer to each other. I think last time, I think in the caucus, in this same building, the Bernie side and the Hillary side probably were less willing to be amicable. I think it's good for this purpose. I think it rallies people who are interested in doing grassroots work to come together. I think many of these people will be the same people who end up going door to door, maybe doing some phone calling. So caucus works more than really get a primary vote record of who they'd vote for. I think it gives a party a chance to find out who might help them on the ground.
Elizabeth Warren is my candidate because I'm excited about the way that she's willing to dream big and fight hard, and I want to see that progressive future, and I think she really does well in the debate stage too. And yeah, I find her very charming in addition to really liking her policy ideas, and I appreciate all the has a plan for that and everything. It reminds me how I like to approach things too. Let's try and make a plan, sort this out, let's think through some details. Yeah, think it a little bit long term.
We were excited to go and support our chosen candidate, Elizabeth Warren, because she is amazing. She has plans for everything and absolutely will take Trump down in every sense of the word come November. Number one, the fact that she isn't a career politician. She actually became a politician when folks told her, oh, you can run, but you won't beat this incumbent. And then she beat him. But not only that, helping to start the Consumer Protection Federal Agency that helped a lot of people, including a friend of mine's back home, who got refunded because Wells Fargo's completely ripped her off. And so if it wasn't for Elizabeth Warren, my friend would have never gotten that refund, and we wouldn't have the protections that we need to hopefully avoid another crisis. She predicted the first one, had a solution, nobody would listen, and now feeling like we could have another boom-bust economy, and I'd rather have her in the White House. I prefer a primary over a caucus. It is nice to get together with your neighbors and other people in the community, but in this day and age, it's antiquated.